All right, back in the studio, episode 4 of Health Further. What's up, Vic? How you doing?
Excited to be back in the studio.
Yeah, man, me too. And this week, we're going to talk about Pear Therapeutics.
You know, it's the first time that I feel like we actually have some investigative journalism going on here.
Yeah.
I didn't know that we had that in us.
Well, this is a fascinating story because we've invested in and sold a company in the digital therapeutic space.
To some of these players. And we know a lot of the players.
Right. So I think that was why this development last week was it last week or this week?
It was this week.
This week.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's why this
fast.
development was so striking.
And it's just such big numbers.
Right. Yeah. Big numbers. And also I think Pear was the clear poster child leader for the digital therapeutic movement opportunity set. And so it's very, very meaningful. It's not like, one of our companies that was maybe smaller.
Everyone was looking to them
Correct.
as how to do it, how to do it successfully,
Correct.
how to do it right. Yeah.
Correct. So this capitulation that we're gonna end with is it's a pretty major story, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the reason we're talking about this week is they sold the assets out of bankruptcy this week.
Yes.
So, I mean, not to bury the lead, that's the end of the story. But the run up to that, I think, is pretty interesting and is instructive. For me as an investor, it's instructive. Yeah.
So as VCs, it's so funny. Whenever we hear about a company, it's like the first thing we do is we go to PitchBook.
Right. Who else was in it? What was going on?
Right,
what were the valuations?
Right. So I always feel like that's a very interesting aspect of the way that we look at stories versus the way that other journalists might look at it.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't have a subscription, PitchBook is not inexpensive. So
No.
if you're in the business, it's worth it. But if you're not, not everyone has access to
That's
that
right.
data.
Let's go ahead and start with this view of the early capital stack into Pear Therapeutics. So seed investment happened in 2015. That's actually when we started with Jumpstart Foundry.
Right.
Capital $5 million in, and the seed round post money value $13 million. Wow, back when
I mean, that's a pretty healthy post money value for a seed company. Then it got. I mean, more recently, last couple of years, it got higher. But in 15, I don't remember a lot of seed
I don't either.
valuations that way. I don't know 5AM Ventures, but that seems like a healthy valuation.
Yeah, it's a good valuation. Okay, 2016 they raised an A. So first of all, that's very quick.
Yes.
After a $5 million round, you're not out of cash. So the fact that you're able to then pull in $20 million, right, at a $32 million post money. So, I mean,
significant 3x step up.
yes, right.
And we know Arboretum; they're a good firm.
Yep.
It's interesting that we invested in another digital therapeutic in 2016.
Yes.
Called Ambiliotech. And it's just interesting that we were doing this, it all rhymes. Of course, our post money value was $2 million.
Right.
So we're maybe more conscious of valuations, but Arboretum's a good firm. I mean,
Everyone has their own model.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
And then in 2017, a B round. I mean, look at this, back to back to back. So
every year.
In 3 years straight, we've gone from $5 million to $20 million to now $50 million of capital coming in.
And
now
it's worth $245
in 3 years.
I mean, isn't America great?
All right. And now we're getting strategics, right? So Novartis is in, and I think we can just say we invested in Ambiliotech, which was a digital therapeutic company targeting amblyopia. Amblyopia, and sold that company to Novartis.
Right.
So Novartis had a digital therapeutic strategy. They were
Novartis was the global leader in digital therapeutics.
Right.
They really were focused. They had a CEO that wanted to move in that direction, and they were putting a lot of effort into that. We benefited from that, and I think Pear benefited from that.
Right. Okay. So to continue on with the story, we're going to go here to this press release from Novartis. It's in the news section, so I assume it's a press release.
Yeah.
And it says Novartis and Pear Therapeutics to develop digital therapeutics for patients with schizophrenia and multiple sclerosis. So they're going public with this partnership. They've made a pretty significant investment in this company, and it's in a space that is not yet coded. right? So there's no CMS codes for this yet. There's not a whole lot of clarity in 2018 from the FDA on this digital therapeutic. It's generally pretty experimental.
Yes.
And probably for Novartis, the amount of capital they're investing very small compared to the rest of their pipeline of more traditional therapeutics that they're investing in.
And they're global, right? This is from Basel.
Yeah,
so
right, exactly.
They are thinking about it. Certainly, the U.S. is a big market, but they're thinking about it globally. And digital therapeutics and Pear and Amblyotech, there was a lot of promise. There is a lot of promise in that space.
Okay.
So they invested and immediately announced this partnership.
Yes. And they're talking about the target areas, right?
Yes,
schizophrenia
right.
and multiple sclerosis.
Right.
Okay, great. So 2019, so the year after that announcement, a C round, $64 million comes in.
Right.
Valuation. I mean, this valuation is just getting bumped up. So now we're at 494. We're basically at $500 million valuation.
I don't know who Temasek is. I assume they're another strategic.
Temasek, I think, probably.
Temasek,
yeah. But that's the lead investor in the C round.
Mm-hmm.
Fair amount of capital, and this is one of those. It's one of those venture private market experiences whereby the social proof of the investors kind of leads to the next round, right? So 5 a.m. to Arboretum to Novartis to now Temasek, right? It's like if these guys are in,
big global markets, they have a secret sauce that's going to be wonderful, treating really problematic disease states, and let's go, $500 million.
Yeah, and this happens all the time, and similar to the way in like big corporate America, the old saying of no one ever gets fired for choosing IBM. You know that old saying?
Yeah.
It's not that dissimilar in our world, is it? Right? Isn't it true that when you're talking to your LPAC or whatever, you get a lot of social proof if you've got some blue chip fund or some corporate brand.
Strategics, whether they are brilliant or not brilliant, they bring a lot of credibility, a lot of clout, especially Novartis that was very active in the space. And I think from their point of view, it's interesting, right? I think they look at it as a fairly small strategic investment where they'll learn something. And yet a lot of the VC and our limited partners and other VCs would look at it as a stamp of approval. So you have this interesting dichotomy of the outside views the strategic as confirmatory, and yet a lot of times they are trying to learn.
I mean, let's be honest. Had we been in 5 a.m.'s shoes, having made that seed investment, we would look like geniuses.
5 a.m., I mean, independent of how it ended, 5 a.m. made a ton of money, and their LPs are very happy.
It's amazing, right? It's amazing. So you have to sort of just acknowledge this dynamic in the venture world that shows itself over and over and over again. And I believe we're seeing it at play here.
And there's sort of two strategies for a seed investor, right? Like you can either build what it really is a product to be sold to a strategic large company for $100 million, $150 million. That was our strategy with Amblyotech, and we were able to do that with Novartis. Or you can try to launch a company, let other really big partners take it and run with it, and birth a new unicorn. And I think it's fair to say that at Jumpstart, we think the risk of that is the risk return is not right.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of VC funds that do that and do that well. I think it's challenging in healthcare.
Agree. Okay, let's keep moving, because now the plot starts to thicken after 4 rounds over 5 years, amounting to $140 million in capital, basically. Right? About $140 million in capital. Okay, so then January 2021. This is from Moby Health News. Novartis trial shows no benefits from Pear's schizophrenia app as CEO cites trial irregularities.
Right. Record scratch. What are we gonna do? We put 150 million, give or take 10, $500 million in valuation. I love the sub tagline. This won't impact the rollout at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is not uncommon in the world of drug discovery, and development. But this was the key product that they were exploring in their partnership with Novartis. So it's noteworthy that it showed no benefits. I mean, no benefits?
I mean, no benefits for the patients that were in the trial. And as we both know, as probably most listeners know, you select the patients for the trial that you think are most likely to get the most benefit.
That's right.
And they were not correct on that. Maybe it would be beneficial in some other population set, but probably not as valuable patients.
Okay. So this is, as you said, the record scratch. So now let's go to the next funding. So in 2021,
I think it's
March,
like 2 months later.
Yeah. A D round of capital. And we also need to say, where are we now? So every round up until now was pre-pandemic. We're now in the pandemic.
Yeah.
We're in 2021 and we're in the crazy times, right? Where all the valuations were 2x what they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And digital anything
yes,
is on fire.
Yes.
Right. Wonderful, exciting. Maybe it doesn't work, but we still need digital stuff.
Right. Right. And we've got all this outsider money in the venture space.
Yeah. And SoftBank is the poster child for
SoftBank and Tiger, right?
Yeah,
I mean, those are the two big names whenever we talk about the crazy 2021s.
Right.
So D round, 132 million of capital. So equal to all the capital previously invested in this D round at an undisclosed post-money value 2 months after the trial for schizophrenia showed absolutely no benefits
with their strategic partner.
Yes. So I don't even know what to say about that, except it's representative of the kinds of deals and the investments that were being made during that window of time. And I think it's why so many people believe that the 2021 vintage is going to be one of the worst of the last 25 years of venture capital. I mean,
yeah,
we're gonna get to why everything I'm saying right now is wrong in this case. But I think just looking at this particular investment,
at this point, not knowing the end of the story,
right.
You would say SoftBank is a momentum investor. It's an exciting digital leads anything time. And they're trying to deploy money because they have whatever they have, several $1 billion to deploy quickly.
Right.
And they don't care about the terms
right.
or even what the company does.
Right. Okay. So up until this point, Novartis has...
It's interesting that it's undisclosed. PitchBook doesn't usually leave it as undisclosed. I don't really understand why.
Well, it's undisclosed if it's undisclosed, right? So, usually post-money values are shared in press releases and things like that when everyone wants everyone to know sort of what the new value is. You're trying to kind of signal something, right?
So I would assume it means it wasn't a significant up round.
Probably. But I think it
we don't know.
But I think it also leads to where things go by the end of this year, right? By the end of 2021 for this company. So the next shoe to drop is November, the end of November 2021. It was on the 14th. CMS repealed a final rule on its Medicare coverage of initiative technology and definition of reasonable and necessary rule around digital therapeutics.
Right.
Which didn't mean they were never going to do anything around digital therapeutics. But what it meant was we're not ready yet. And it means there's a whole lot of uncertainty around when we're going to be ready. Right?
Yeah. And other payers certainly are not going to be likely to reimburse it.
Yes.
Right? If CMS is repealing it and holding off and doing more study and figuring out things over the next several years, that's a really high hill to climb with other payers.
Yep.
I think we might want to just touch on the FDA positioning around digital therapies generally.
To the degree that we can definitively do that, because as we were kind of trying to research it, I think it was pretty vague and unclear. But I think you're right. We do need to dig into it. So why don't you start, and I'll add some color.
Yeah,
based on what I interpreted from what I read.
Yeah, so it's my understanding. I called our friend Emily, who's been a guest on here, and tried to help her tutor me on it. I think the FDA has decided that they do not have full authorization to rule on software-based digital therapies. And they've asked Congress to give them more clarity. Either, yes, you do have authority, and this is a new mandate that we're granting you, or no, you don't have authority, and then position some other agency to have authority. They really are. Their mandate is to regulate drugs, pharmaceutical, drugs, or devices. And so there are some digital therapies that have a hardware component, but most of Pear's did not. And so if it's software only, they have stated and asked Congress to give them clarity that they don't believe they have authority to regulate this. They have established a track record of evaluating clinical results, clinical studies, and determining if the software application is safe. And if it is safe, they will clear it for use in the public.
Yeah. So the word clear is
the key word there. So when the FDA looks at a digital therapy, to my knowledge, they have never approved it for use in a healthcare setting. When they approve something like a new drug or a device, CMS is traditionally, they always reimburse for that. There was some question about an Alzheimer's drug recently. That was the first time CMS did not fully reimburse. But every other drug and device in the history of FDA, once the FDA approved it, the federal government, U.S. federal government, started paying for it in Medicare. And then pretty quickly, all the other payers follow suit. And when they clear something that does not have the same weight, and as we're seeing here, the reason I wanted to go there, CMS is saying that they're not going to reimburse it, at least right now.
So my interpretation, as I was searching about this, I saw different headlines, mostly saying clear, but I did see a couple of cases in which the language used was the FDA approved the digital therapeutic. And what that, alongside of this sort of CMS repeal of this final rule, leads me to believe is that in this new category, which is an innovative technology, it's not clear who's the lead dog here. And there's not enough alignment to have the FDA in a position where their approval actually equals CMS coding, right? Whereas, there's so much prior work and precedent in general small molecule drug development that once the FDA approves it, it's got this clear path to get a code.
Yeah. I think CMS knows its role.
Right, exactly. I think in this case, this is so new to everything, right? And actually, it's one of the things that I'm not sure whether or not we're going to reference the actual article, but one of the things that was talked about is the difficulties of how digital therapeutics will actually be integrated into the healthcare services workflow today. And that being a concern, right? As CMS is trying to lower the cost of care, do they actually want to, for the purposes of something that might be incrementally better, isn't proven yet to fully replace the existing slate of therapeutics that we have in the market? Do we want to actually increase difficulty, increase cost of delivery by this supposedly less expensive digital means?
Yeah, I think no. So it's not clear who is the lead dog. I think it's a good way to say it. And furthermore, I think both agencies are backing away and don't want to lead. And so you end up with kind of a very challenging regulatory environment because there is no one agency that will determine in a yes or no way, like this is going to work and we want the American people to have access to it. The FDA will say this is safe. But that means you're allowed to sell it, but it's not clear that anyone will reimburse it. So you end up with a cash pay world, which is a small market if it's a market at all.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
So the dates are important. This is November 2021.
Yes.
And pretty quickly thereafter.
Yeah. So we're gonna move a couple weeks ahead. December 6th. So November 14th was when CMS repealed the rule.
Okay.
Yeah. December 3rd, we have this press release saying that Pear is going public via SPAC. The ticker will start on December 6th on the NASDAQ, and they're combining with Thimble Point acquisition company.
Yeah, that's just a SPAC shell.
To do the SPAC.
Right. Yeah, for $1.6 billion valuation.
Yes. So we didn't have a disclosure on what the valuation was in the SoftBank round, but now we know, a year later, because that was in March.
Yeah.
So 9 months later, the valuation is now $1.6 billion.
Yes. And so I would assume that the SoftBank round was less.
One would assume.
And so I think it's fair to say that we're showing publicly available information.
Yeah. So everything
we're showing was known on December 6th. And, the IPO, the SPAC IPO happened. People bought it. And there's a lot of really exciting sales information, such as the FDA has cleared 3 of Pear's therapeutics to be used in the U.S. And as we just talked about, that may not be that valuable. It's true, but I'm not sure that many people buying the SPAC understood the difference between cleared and approved.
Right.
And so you might say, well, these are investors. They're trying to take it public, and they're going to keep working on this, and they need a better source of financing. And everyone's in together, and so let's just see how it pans out.
Right.
Except that not everyone stayed in the SPAC.
Yes.
And so that's the really interesting piece. Is again with PitchBook, we can see what happened.
Right. So reverse merger completed December 3rd, and everyone gets out.
Everyone sold.
Everyone gets out.
So Novartis sold in full. There's a list of 21 people, so I couldn't get it all on this image. Some groups like SoftBank sold, it just says sold partial. And I think what that means is the investment bankers and others said to SoftBank, you can't sell
the
everything.
Whole thing.
You can't sell the whole thing.
You've
been in 9 months.
Right.
But as you said, 5 a.m. Ventures sold.
What a win.
And God bless them. Right?
What a win.
They did well. It's a huge, we could probably calculate it.
Right.
It's 100x. It's a big, big win.
Yeah.
And, I'm a VC, so I'm biased, but the early VC, I feel like they're just trying to get something going.
Mm-hmm.
I have no information, but I think SoftBank may have had this as a possible pathway.
I don't think there's any question about that. We have to remember that 2021 was really just SPAC fever, right? Nonstop talk about the SPACs. Everyone was doing SPACs.
People were super excited about SPACs.
And it was working. Yeah. It was working. People were. How many SPACs did Chamath launch? I mean, they had letters, right? It was A, B, C, D, E.
Because it's Chamath, he did 26 SPACs
for the alphabet.
Yeah. He didn't get them all out because the music stopped before he got them all out. But he got, 10 or something out. And I think they were working in the sense that the public was buying them.
Right.
And that's the end of the story. That it works. If the public buys it, the rest of the story doesn't matter.
And the argument was, we need to stop, being beholden to Goldman Sachs and these other, super large IBs who are, grifting and taking all of this money out of the process, and they're gatekeepers to the public market.
And doing we need due to let diligence these things, and actually like doing research on it. But
the idea that this company Pear that had a clinical trial that showed zero effectiveness.
Yes.
And less than a month before the SPAC, had CMS say, we got no clarity at all on when we're ever going to reimburse this form of therapeutic.
The entire class of therapeutics, of which they are the leading one.
This was able to get out into the market via SPAC for $1.6 billion.
Right. And all those people sold.
It's just...
And at some level, it's like buyer beware. Like, okay, if you don't do your own due diligence, you don't understand. But at another level, like maybe there's a reason that big investment banks kind of gate things more carefully. It's sort of both ends. Like,
look, think about the other side of this, right? This thing goes back, it goes out, and all the Robinhood, people are buying this thing up. They don't know anything about healthcare at all. They're not tracking any of this storyline that we just sort of ran through.
Right.
I mean,
it's a decent amount of work to even dig all this up, and then to try to understand approved versus cleared is pretty nuanced.
And isn't this the kind of like bag holding behavior that everyone keeps saying crypto has been doing, left and right?
Yeah. And this is the same.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page about that.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So there's a little bit more to talk about here. So February of 2022. So this thing is out in December.
A lot of the people are gone.
Yeah. But Pear's still out there, though.
But Pear's still out there, and the CEO, the management's still there, and they're trying to figure it out.
Right. And we have this article here saying CMS code seen as a major step towards reimbursement for digital therapeutics. And what's sort of the deal here, right? We have a HCPCS code that's
this
level
is
2.
This is a classic PR spin thing, right? Like there's a lot of, if we could get a code that would be really valuable in getting adoption.
That's right.
And they say something like that multiple times, and they talk a reporter into running the story, and it's accurate, but not really meaningful. I mean, CMS already said pretty clearly they weren't going to rule on it. They could make a code, but they have not made a code.
Can I just drop to this brief here has a couple of bullet points, and can I just drop to this third one here real quick, just to read the revenue, because like I've got portfolio companies that are tracking at this level. So Pear, which went public in December through a SPAC merger, hasn't yet reported its 2021 earnings. In January, the company shared it had met. This is January of 2022, right?
Yeah.
The company shared it had met its target for the year to have 14,000 prescriptions for its products. The company initially set guidance for $4 million in revenue in 2021 and hopes to increase that number to $22 million in 2022. A company targeting $4 million of revenue.
What's that revenue multiple?
I mean,
I don't know. 4 million, 1.6 billion divided by 4 million is a big ass fucking number,
dude.
And also, they can't tell the revenue for last year. Like, okay, maybe earnings aren't ready yet, but you ought to have some visibility to the revenue.
And it's only 4 million. How can you not tell this?
Right. Well, that was the guidance. They're not saying they actually had 4 million.
Okay. So,
and they're hoping to increase to 22 million. Still not worth 1.6 billion. It's an okay growth rate. We have companies growing faster than that. And dude, we're not worth $1 billion.
Dude, the EPS on this is just like, it's non-existent.
There's no non-existent. EPS. Right, it's no EPS. Yeah, so we don't have a slide for it, but they then did 2 rounds of layoffs in 22.
Which was customary.
Everyone. Market crashed, the Fed's pulling back.
Yeah.
The Fed really started ramping up in the summer.
Yep.
A lot of people did 2 rounds of layoffs. But then it wasn't enough.
Yeah, there was never going to be enough.
Never going to be enough.
So the final shoe to drop, I believe the story was broken by Stat News, but we're Axios fans over here, so we've got the Axios story up. And digital therapeutics company Pear Therapeutics was sold for parts to 4 companies for a combined $6.05 million in an auction last week.
Yeah,
that is less than the seed stage valuation post money. It's less than the pre-money.
10 years ago, or I don't know, 8 years ago. And they sold it for the IP. The IP is
and the IP
maybe
was worth $6 million? Dude, like
barely. I mean, I'm not sure that even is worth it.
So I mean, there's more to talk about here on this bankruptcy and the value of these parts. But what does this mean for digital therapeutics? I mean, if the biggest name in the space sells for parts for less than the pre-money value of the seed stage investment, what does that say for the entire category? I mean,
well, I mean,
can we isolate this to this particular company was just a sham? I mean, I don't know these people, but I think as healthcare investors, this is a legitimate question. Is this category done? Don't ever touch it? Or did this company do absolutely no favors to every good founder in this space that is actually trying to develop real digital therapeutics that we should be appropriately valuing, given the risk, given the fact that there are no codes in the space, given the fact that trials are going to be very, very hard, given the unknowns between who is the lead dog in the FDA or the CMS? Like, how are we supposed to read into this?
So, I mean, I'm looking at a couple digital therapy deals right now, and I'm a believer that Pear is a terrible example and a huge black eye on digital therapies, and it can be done in a much better way. And so the areas to stay away from that Jumpstart Capital is certainly staying away from is, I don't care about an adjunct extra, let me help you stay compliant on your medication, let me coach you through this process, but you still have to go to your doctor too. Right? So if it's extra and going to help me, my doctor, my nurse, and my caregivers can do that. And if it is really helpful, then maybe it is somehow bundled in a value-based care thing, but it's not a carve-off separate company.
Its own thing.
It's not its own thing.
Right.
It's not its own thing.
Right. It's a feature.
It's a feature that's part of the care delivery model.
Correct.
And the doctor can decide, or the caregiver with the right licensor can decide, but we don't need FDA to allow it because the docs will manage it. And so I'm interested in, I wouldn't even call that a digital therapeutic. I think that's a digital health coaching app.
Yeah.
And there's lots of those.
It's a compliment.
There's 1,000 things on both of our app stores. I have a bunch installed, but they don't try to say they're digital therapy. It's a digital health app. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you get a higher valuation multiple if you say it's a therapy.
Right.
It's not a fucking therapy if it doesn't have therapeutic benefit. And so I think there are digital therapies, but they must replace another therapy. So you do not have to take as high a dose of the drug, or you don't have to take a drug at all.
Right.
Or I don't need a medical procedure because I'm doing this thing. If it is actually replacing some other interaction with the healthcare system, either a drug or a procedure, then I would give it the moniker digital therapy. But then that's not enough. I think it has to be integrated into the existing workflow.
And therein lies the problem.
And these coastal kind of hype go-go things typically don't take the time to understand the existing workflows. But I think there are incredible opportunities to work with physicians, work with health systems, work with payers. What do they need help with? Where are there existing therapies that are not really helping patients. And some of those can be delivered digitally. I think a lot about how do I access the patient's body. The reason we did Amblyotech is it was an eye care thing. And the eyes, through video and glasses, you can literally access the eye.
Sure.
You need to figure out how are you interacting, how are you interfacing with the human body if you're going to have a digital effect, therapeutic effect.
Okay. So yes to everything you said. And also, we were dealing with something in the vision care space, which is sort of its own.
Vision is a fun place to play because it's a very efficient, the docs are aligned.
It's very efficient.
We did, and one can talk to ophthalmologists and other eye care specialists and integrate with what they need help with.
Yes. There are massive, massive challenges to this space based on the lack of regulatory clarity, especially in our government today, right? We spent a lot of time in the last show talking about the debt ceiling and
a week later, nothing's happened. It hasn't solved. Yeah.
Look, the TLDR of our view of the government, which is most people's view of the government, is it's unbelievably inefficient right now. And it's already inefficient by design, but now it's inefficient because of, bad behavior and, an unwillingness to collaborate, right?
Yes.
So if FDA and CMS are not taking advantage of something like the Chevron deference doctrine and are saying, look, no, we don't have enough clarity. We need Congress to step in. I mean, this could be 10 plus years. And by the way, I think AI is a much bigger issue that they need to kind of get their act around.
Yeah.
Their act together around now. So I just think this digital therapeutic thing is, look, when we invested in Amblyotech, it was much less fraught.
Sure.
Now, given this whole Pear situation,
Pear's a huge black mark.
This is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
This is going to be a problem.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I'm an optimist, right? So I will say that if you are aligned with the healthcare providers and they are helping design how this tool will be used in treating patients, and they want it, and it has a measurable therapeutic benefit that replaces some other, maybe another treatment has side effects, that's an easier adoption curve.
And that is no easy feat.
That's really hard.
That's really hard. And that's actually a really great segue into our second segment. So let's stop there because this has been a good breakdown of what's happened with Pear Therapeutics. Let's stop there and let's go to a quick commercial for our pre-seed fund here at Jumpstart Health Investors, Jumpstart Foundry.
I want to take a minute to talk about our investment vehicle, Jumpstart Foundry. It is the product that Marcus and I put together first. It invests in pre-seed companies at huge scale, 30, 40, 50 assets a year, every year. Jumpstart Foundry invests in across the U.S., the best and brightest entrepreneurs that are really making a difference, making something better in healthcare. If you listen to this podcast, you hear all the challenges, everything we're facing in healthcare. Bottom line is we spend $4 trillion a year and we don't get great outcomes. Jumpstart Foundry allows individuals for a very small minimum, $25K, you can come in and get to deploy that capital across the entire portfolio. You get immediate justification. There are no management fees, super easy to get involved and really make a difference. You can have an impact. Come learn more at www.jsf.co. That's Jumpstart Foundry. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
All right, we're back, and let's go back to the segue. So you were saying in order for a digital therapeutic to work, you need to do it, you need to develop it in concert with the healthcare provider and yada, 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 and on and on and on. And as I'm listening to that,
it's hard. I agree.
I was like, dude, that's like one of the hardest things in the world to do. You're like walking a tightrope between two buildings trying to get that done, right? And that's a pretty good segue into talking about Andreessen Horowitz letter. They write these letters, whenever they're like kind of manifestos, they're kind of calls to action. It started.
Mark Andreessen's first one started the whole company.
Yeah. Software's eating the world.
Right. And he had a lot of success for that.
Yeah.
He was.
So they keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
they came out with this, hey, tech, it's time to build in healthcare, sort of a call to arms to the technology innovator community.
Yes.
Come work in healthcare. And I sort of am of two minds of this. One, I wanted to amplify it, and I love that they're using their platform to encourage the best software engineers, the best innovators across the planet. I mean, I love our community. Thanks for listening. They have a bigger community right now.
No question.
And it's great that they're saying, come make things better in healthcare. So that is wonderful, and hopefully some people will do it. But then the rest of the piece, I think, is kind of tone deaf. It's what you would say if you were sitting in Silicon Valley as a, multi-billion-dollar fund.
It only had one goal, which was my problem with it, which was its goal was to encourage tech people to enter into healthcare. And that's great. We do need more and more citizens. Look, we need more of everybody being interested in working in healthcare.
I mean, it's a huge societal problem, and it needs a lot of work.
Yes. So, yes, I love the fact that they're using their platform. Now, look, this is a capitalist environment. They are venture capitalists. They're self-interested. They've decided they want to make a big bet in healthcare. That's been clear for a while. So their self-interest is they want more tech talent to get into healthcare because these are their people. They're tech people, right? Yeah. Andreessen Horowitz, right? I think there were a couple of areas in this call to action that just felt very, very tone deaf to me. Or maybe tone deaf is not really the right word, but misleading if you really understand how healthcare works, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to go in any particular order, but since it's on the screen, the first one that jumps out at me is this bottom sentence on the screen right now. So I'll just read the sentence. It says, the most impactful companies are built at the frontier, and healthcare is the next frontier. Okay, agree with that.
Yeah.
It's time to put our tech skills to work. The mother of all markets is ripe for disruption. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not ripe for disruption.
It's not ripe, and I'm not sure we want to disrupt an OR where people are being operated on. It's not ripe for that.
No.
And even if it was, I'm not sure that's what we want to do.
Right. Yeah. So to me, this begins.
Yeah, that's the start of the end.
That's the start of the end, because it's funny, they have the sentence and then they call it out here because it's an important sentence, right? And then they kind of go into the whole but healthcare is hard, and
this is my favorite line. Healthcare is undoubtedly intimidating, but we've learned it, and so can you. That is not accurate, and that it's just approaching incompetence, but how cavalier it is to say we have this totally dialed in, we're done, we don't learn anymore, we've learned it all. I've been investing in healthcare for 23 years, and I learned stuff today. I mean, it's
the purpose of this show
is so that you and I can learn.
That's come on, man.
And the more I learn, the more I realize how I have to learn. And so it's just arrogant and not right. But then they're implying if you come to one of our meetups or you listen to our podcast, you can learn it too. And you can figure out a niche in healthcare. I was just talking about working with clinicians around a particular use case and figuring out a digital solution. We invest in teams of people that do that all the time, but it's hard and complex, and you need to find a particular niche where you can get an advantage.
So then they go into this, bit about the scale to say, but of course, the massive scale of the market is a good thing. The United States healthcare market is 5 times the size of the global advertising market, in which the majority of the major tech companies operate. The American healthcare market could support dozens of FANGs, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, scale companies, but today only one exists, United Health Group. So again, this is just a really very, very misleading thing. It doesn't say anything about the fractured nature of this market. Even when you're talking about United Health Group, it's a false equivalent to compare it to Facebook or Amazon or Apple. If you're United Health Group does not have the market dominance that any of those companies have in their respective categories. And that's by design. That's by regulatory design.
I was going to say they wouldn't be allowed to.
That's by regulatory design.
Right.
Like, so again, this is just another kind of, yes, the scale of United Health Group is significant, but you have to, that's not, again, it just
that's
lacks
right,
the nuance.
But that's right, but not important to this discussion.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Then the next paragraph is another one I love. Second, we turn to the concern that healthcare is first of all, this whole thing is like, it maybe fits on 2 pages.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
I'm all for brevity, but like healthcare, you know, it's like, it's just not. Anyway, so second, we turn to the concern that healthcare is a highly regulated industry. This is indeed true, but many of the most iconic companies of our time, Lyft, Airbnb, have been built in complex regulated markets. Furthermore, those that were built in unregulated markets, Google, Meta, Amazon, have all come to face intense regulatory scrutiny and pressure eventually. Regulation seems to be either an input to or a result of all great companies. This is not in any way, shape, or form relative to the level.
That's what I meant. Tone deaf.
To the level of regulation in healthcare.
It's not right. Yeah.
What would have been better would have been to say, talk about the regulation in an environment like the airline industry, right? You need to talk about something where lives are on the line at scale.
Yeah.
Lives are not on the line at scale in e-commerce. Lives are not on the line at scale in advertising. Right? They're quite frankly, lives are not on the line in the hotel industry. Like, they're not.
At least fintech. I mean, like, fintech is where a lot of people go.
Yeah.
Because it has been, they have made it somewhat deregulated. But I agree, the airline industry is better. I think it's actually a little bit more educational, but less of a good bullet point to compare like eye care and plastic surgery to other parts of healthcare, and point out that in the $4 trillion market, there are some areas that are less regulated than others, and certainly the back office administrative stuff is they get to eventually. There are parts in healthcare where you could enter and really make it a big impact, but that's not the right point.
Yeah, and then again, false equivalence. Third and finally, we agree that healthcare is complex, but so are most markets, whether it's the hotel industry, taxi industry, or the digital advertising industry. What makes healthcare feel even more complex is its scale, which we've established is a good thing. I mean, again, it's just false equivalence. I really wish they didn't even try to relate healthcare to these other tech companies. Like, I know why they're trying to do that, but it doesn't work. It doesn't actually play out that way. What they should have done was said, okay, how many successful IPOs have there been in healthcare, relative to the tech IPOs? I mean, it's going to be a super small fraction, because that's not the kind of companies that we are building in healthcare. We're building companies that are going to get tucked into, these large platforms.
And it's because of the regulatory environment that is the better risk return profile.
Yeah. And okay, they go IPO for a second like Oak Street, and then they get bought up by CVS. I mean, come on. Like, what are we really talking about here? This is not. So then they get to a part where I start to agree with them again, which is why you should come to healthcare, which is more just the ethos of the work that we're doing here, right? I mean, this is meaningful work. I was talking to somebody earlier today about why I got into healthcare from my, technology background. Mm-hmm. And I used to do a bunch of digital marketing stuff. Right. And by the end, it was so vapid and soul-sucking because everything was talking about people from the perspective of converting them. Yeah. It was just awful. Like, you just felt everything was like pixeling people and driving them to convert to things and taking advantage of them. And how can I get more impressions in front of them? Right. And it's just awful. Whereas in healthcare, even with all of the nasty regulatory, barriers that we have to deal with, at the end of the day, the work we're doing is good work. This is work that is, helping our society, helping families, helping individuals. And that feels good. It feels good to work in this industry.
Yeah, it's hard to build a successful healthcare company without also really helping people live better lives.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that Jumpstart's mission, not for either our funds, but at the holding company level, is improve health for all. it's not have the highest internal rate of return to get the most financial return.
No.
It's improve health for all people. And I think we believe that in doing so, we end up having a great financial return.
Right.
And that's what's wonderful about healthcare is it's you get to do both end, right? Like whether you want to really change the world for the better or make a huge pile of money, or you want to do both of those things, either way, healthcare has a place for you. And they could have said, they do say that, but they say that after they say a bunch of things that are misleading.
Yeah. And one thing I really wish they would have talked about that they completely missed are, here are the players. Here's who you will have to sell into. Because guess what? Generally speaking, it ain't the patient, right? They completely avoided talking about that.
I think they don't understand. I'm not sure they understand that.
No, come on. I will give them the benefit of the doubt that they know you're selling into payers, or you're selling into, hospital systems, or you're selling into surgery centers or whatever. They know that. But the fact that they're not like calling out the fact that you're generally not selling into the patient in this industry, and that these are really, really entrenched markets, and that these people have spent, if you're talking about on the clinical side, you're talking about people who have spent, 10, 12 plus years in school, still continuing to go to school, getting their continuing education credits. And they're not like techies.
Right.
They, in fact, they have, on the whole, there's a bit of
not to use technology.
There's a bit of a disdain for technology, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, this thing reads like, we're waiting for you to bring your beautiful tech to this awful world that, and it's like, that's not how people in healthcare think about technology at all.
That's right. Yeah. And I went and looked at their last 10 investments, and the reason I question how well they understand that point is 7 or 8 of them are selling to non-healthcare groups, right? So they're selling to patients to lose weight, or they're selling to other entrepreneurs to build stuff, but we're making money selling picks and shovels. Or, there are a couple that are selling physician practice groups. We talked last week about a AI-based documentation thing.
Yeah.
They have one of those.
Yeah.
And so it's not that they don't have anything selling to health systems and payers, but many of them are direct-to-consumer products or selling to other entrepreneurs. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that is a pretty niche part of the market.
Yeah, it doesn't align very well with your constant talking points about the $4 trillion and like the scale and the impact and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right.
That's right.
Well, I don't know if there's much more to say about this. Again, thank you, A16Z, for writing something that's going to be read by many more people than will hear this podcast.
And if Mark Andreessen wants to come on and talk about it, we're happy to have him.
Yeah. That is a plus. That is a good thing. And conversely, it's not completely honest. I would say it's not completely honest. There's multiple false equivalents here. I wish they didn't even feel the need to make those false equivalents. Like people in technology are also patients. That I think that was a total missed opportunity, is to speak to the part of technologists that actually are patients.
Yeah, they're patients. They have parents that need care.
Right.
They have children that need care. You could really pull on the purpose side.
Yes, big time.
But what they didn't want to do, I think, in my interpretation, is I think you have to come to Middle America. You have to sit with health systems. You have to talk to payers. You have to actually understand how is the work done in the facilities. This is not Vic Gatto. This is Steve Blank, right? From Stanford. You have to talk to the customers you're selling to, do customer discovery. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of those in San Francisco.
Right.
And sure, you could talk to Kaiser or Stanford Medical, but a lot of the innovation is going on in Nashville. It's going on not only in Nashville, it's going on in Minneapolis and Houston. And there's a lot of markets where I think you could learn a ton. But these software engineers should go learn what the customers need.
Right.
And then they will build incredible things aligned with those are the customers, the nurse, the doctor, the nurse assistant, the caregiver in the home, the payer that's doing case management and on the phone with patients all the time. That's who needs help. And they didn't take advantage of that, which I think they could have.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have anything more to say about this. This actually kind of exhausts me a little bit, just because I think this is exactly why we only do healthcare as venture capitalists, right? Because it's so difficult that trying to split my brain between it and something else would only make me that much less effective as a healthcare investor, right? I don't want to get confused at all about what I'm trying to do in this industry. And I have to spend in fact, look, who do we spend the vast majority of our time with? Technology people or healthcare people?
Healthcare people. I mean, that's what we need to understand.
Right.
The technology, I mean, healthcare is adopting technology that's 20 years old. Right. So like, you're not putting in some new vector-based database with a crypto encryption thing. Like, you're just not doing that. I mean,
right.
You're doing something that is, fairly outdated from a consumer tech point of view. Right. But I want to end with when we started. I mean, we're the two co-founders of Jumpstart. When we were in the skunk works phase and experimenting, we tried all kinds of things. And it wasn't only healthcare. And my recollection, sometimes I misremember things, but my recollection is in Nashville, the place where we had a sustainable advantage was in healthcare.
Yes.
So there are wonderful big markets that in Silicon Valley and Boston and New York and LA, they do good work. But in healthcare, you have to be in somewhere in middle America. Nashville's one of several cities.
Yeah.
Because that's where the innovation is. That's where the patients are. That's where the actual critical doctors and payers and people doing the real work are. So you either have to fly here
Nashville,
or live here.
Minneapolis, Denver. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole different set of ecosystems where actual healthcare innovation is happening, and they're not the coast.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Ohio is kind of interesting. Cleveland, Columbus, Ohio, Texas is a lot of good stuff. Florida, a lot of old people in Florida. A lot of work in Florida.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think that it is. That's why we elected to do healthcare.
Yep.
And
I mean, hold on. Just to prove that point, can we just talk about the fact that the two biggest EMRs, Epic and Cerner, came out of Madison, Wisconsin, and Kansas City?
Yeah. That's a perfect illustration.
Right there.
And they have, I don't know, they probably have 95% market share. They might have 100%.
Oh, no.
Well, they're not at HCA.
No.
So,
Meditech and Athena are,
right. Yeah. I think Athena is more in the physician groups. I was thinking on the health system, but it doesn't matter. Like, they are dominant.
And then eClinical Works, which is dwindling, I think. But the point is, like, the two biggest ones are literally in middle America.
Yeah. And I was in Kansas City 2 weeks ago. Like, you have to go there and meet the people to understand what does Cerner, now Oracle, what are they doing? Where are they headed? And what should I build that is not on their roadmap? And you only get that from sitting with those people and understanding it. And then you got to talk to the health systems of how are you using this? What's pretty good, and maybe it's not perfect, but I'm not going to change my behavior for a new thing.
Right.
And what is, like, my hair's on fire. I can't deal with this anymore. I need a solution. And that's called customer discovery. And every startup needs to do that. And Andreessen Horowitz knows that. So it's great that they're bringing attention to this. And then once they fail, the entrepreneurs can come to Nashville and we'll back them.
All right. On that note, I think that wraps up episode 4 of Health Further. Thanks for hanging in there with us. We'll be back next week to talk about whatever happens next week.
Yes. Hopefully the debt ceiling will be lifted.
Goodness gracious. All right. See you then. Bye.